Before we get into the interview that I did with Dan Wood of LaserArchaeology, both my friend and my colleague, I just wanted to say it's been awesome, the response that I've had from everybody that's actually looked at the website and looked at the content and looked at the articles. Thank you so much. I am deeply touched by it. Anyway, I'm going to get back to walking the beach, but I hope you enjoy our little conversation with Dan, and I'm sure, just reach out to us and ask any questions, and maybe we can do some more in the future. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Hello and welcome to LaserArchaeology.com. I'm Dan Wood and I'm joined by the founder of LaserArchaeology, Dr. Adam Spring. Hello, Adam.
Hello, Dan. How are you today?
Very good, thank you. Now, we've got lots to talk about. Obviously, this incredible new website that you've launched recently, all this incredible content that you're putting out as well, and of course these articles are causing a real stir at the moment. Before we get into all that though, I thought it might be quite interesting just to kind of get a bit of an overview for people that might be new maybe to the world of laser scanning. Give us a bit of background on the technology and what first got you interested in it.
Yeah, so as I outline in the articles, it kind of started with space and defense applications for remote navigation. So using these technologies as vision systems in, things like Mars rovers and things like that. But I think, the really interesting thing of where we're at this point in time, in terms of when I got into it, because when I got into it, really, it was kind of like, I don't know, what I call semi-mainframe period, if you want to refer to it like a computing history style things, in the sense that, these technologies and the technology I still use are kind of still that way. You were paying for something either the level of an executive level car in terms of cost, or basically a house. So now where we're at, talking in 2020, we are kind of at a phase whereby, tablets are now getting them, cars are also, the term LiDAR, and I kind of talk about that in the conclusion for part 2, is becoming a very in vogue thing, kind of where blockchain was a few years ago. And, to answer the other part of your question, how I got into it is really I was fortunate enough to get access to the technology in 2006, and immediately I seen very strong applications in archaeology because you can document a site in real time to high fidelity in 3D.
Yeah, because I've been watching some of the videos that you've released as well, and there are videos dating back to that era. Laser scanning's actually been around for a long, long time, hasn't it?
Yeah, actually doing this retrospective in a way has kind of been crazy, because some of the programs that I grew up watching in the UK, and I'm sure you did as well, Dan, things like Bad Influence, they actually contain both the cyberware scanner and some 3D triangulation scanners for smaller objects. So it really started to make it out of car manufacturing and very specific communities in the early 90s, but for the level of scale and detail for a lot of the ones that I use, really the late 90s was the sweet spot.
So these articles, you've dedicated a lot of your life to writing these. When you started this journey, did you think that it was going to take you over a decade to write these articles? And where did that journey kind of begin, and how come it took up such a big part of your life?
Well, the immediate answer is no. If I thought it would have taken 10 years, I may not have done it, but I don't know, curiosity, I probably would have ended up doing so anyway. It came about because when I started using the technology, as I think I said in the intro to LaserArchaeology, the first video that was done for the website, you had the hardware and you had the software, and then you had the stuff that came out at the end, i.e. the point clouds, and then, using them to model stuff. But I could never really get a satisfactory answer of where the technology came from. So really, the idea for the articles came from when I first picked up the laser scanners. And the thing that really sparked it initially, and it's ironic in a way because I'm now friends with the guy that developed the algorithm, is with the registration process and how you take the different point clouds and bring them all together. Because it was doing it and I was kind of like, yeah, but what's the underlying background behind this? And I couldn't get an answer. And then when I first started looking into it, and this was in 2006, I kept hitting a wall because I started to look at it from survey tool point of view in terms of history. And all of a sudden I would just get this blackout of I would reach a certain point, say to around about 97, 98, and then I wouldn't get anything beyond that point. So, 96 and back onwards. And then over the years, I just kept chipping away until eventually I started to find it in other disciplines and other applications. And then really around about 2013, that's when it all really started to come together. I probably had a first working draft by 2013, essentially.
Well, why did you start writing them, and why did you think it was important to document this journey?
Well, I'm a great believer in order to know where you're going, you've got to know where you've been, right? And not having histories, or in a way, you know, these articles are archaeology as well, because I look at it like material culture, which is what it is. You know, without having that history in place, what you potentially have are myths and legends. And while myths and legends are great, it can also be very dangerous. And I mean, if you look at where we're at in terms of the industry at this point in time, you know, everything is kind of indicating in 2020 that this decade may be defined by the time in which these technologies become more commodified. So they end up in smartphones, they end up in cars and other things, and they become lower in cost. So, you know, part of having this history, in one respect, it kind of gives back to the community that's given me so much. But in another respect, it could help actually drive things forward as well, in the sense that we have a better perspective now of how things came about. And, you know, given that we're entering into a next phase of where the technology is going, it could be useful in helping shape that.
Well, you've spoken to some key figures in the industry and, you know, some really interesting people in these articles.
Yeah.
What have been some of the highlights and, you know, the people that you've met?
That's a really good question that I can define in a number of ways. I mean, one of the highlights that springs to mind is around about 2014, 2015. I kind of got bored of like the hype cycle associated with this stuff. So I went off on a little bit of a tangent, and I started looking at, you know, the formative years of my computing background, and, you know, striking up a friendship with somebody like Dave Needle, who was a hardware designer on many games consoles, and certainly a computer that was influential on a lot of people, the Amiga. A highlight for me was kind of, I wasn't really going off on a tangent, it was my brain leading me in a direction I needed to go, was becoming very good friends with that person, and then finding out that actually the Amiga computer was used in a Sandia Lab, you know, laser scanner as well. So I mean, being able to connect the dots in various different ways is probably an overall highlight, maybe I would say, through that example. But then another one, which is really weird, is kind of becoming friends with people that are kind of my heroes in a way. You know, that's the other thing as well. I never intended to become friends with some of the people that I have become with because of these articles.
Well, people can read them at LaserArchaeology.com. You put the work out there for free. I mean, you know, this could have probably been a published book. Why did you decide to release it in the way that you did?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff there, so it's likely that I will probably do a book at some stage. But I think, again, coming back to, you know, having a history like this, it became clear to me, certainly towards the end when they were ready to come out, that part of this was accessibility. You know, I mean, you spend 10 years on something, and then, you know, it's behind the firewall, say, of an academic publication or a journal and a subscription fee. So, I mean, making it open access, you know, obviously I have given away something for free. But the other side of it is, you know, I'm okay with that, and it was the right thing to do, particularly for the technologies, you know, because there is just so much information in those articles that it was just making it accessible to people was just the right thing to do.
Well, where do you see this work going?
I mean, for me in the future, I mean, I'll probably do audio versions of both of the articles because they're quite dense. I mean, I think they're a good overview, but I think, you know, there's a lot in there, and I think it may help if there's an audio version of me reading it out there, because people can just listen to it then in the age of things like podcasts and stuff like that. And, you know, there's a lot of other content I've got as well. So you'll probably see things popping up as the months and maybe the years, as I said, who knows, progress. But basically, I think for now, probably the two main things coming up are going to be the audio books, shall we say, for want of a better term.
And what's the reaction been like from the laser community so far?
I mean, overall, it's been really good. The thing that surprised me the most was actually just how grateful a lot of people were that I actually made them open access. I wasn't expecting that, you know. I mean, you know, there's going to be certain people out there that obviously just take the information and think, well, this guy's giving it to us for free and that's fine. But I mean, overall, it's been positive. I mean, there's been a few egos here and there, but that's the way it goes. So I ain't too worried by that.
Well, obviously, it's been a massive journey, over a decade of your life, connecting all these dots and recording all these stories, and it is an incredible read. I mean, what's been kind of the important lesson that you've taken away from this decade-long study?
The people and not the technology. The key thing that came through to me through all of the examples that are in those articles, and the thing that connect all of them, is it was the people that we're working with and the developing and developing the technology that was the key thing. To solely focus on the technology itself, as in the end result, would really take away from that story of, if it wasn't for unique and determined characters, then none of this stuff would probably be here today.
Well, the articles are open access now at LaserArchaeology.com. You can read them today. Dr. Spring, thank you for talking to us.
Well, thank you as always, Dan, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future.